Hello, my humble heretics. I am Glitch. I have a short series for you. You should watch it. Red Pill Religion is a small community of religious apologist content creators who contribute to the channel owned and operated by Dean Esmay, who prefers to be referred to as Max Kolbe. More on that some other time. Dean is known for his rather singular personality, especially when it comes to his opinions of others. It is the intention of this series to express my observations and opinions on the Red Pill Religion channel and how some of the individuals have the potential to really grow on their channels and in the community. I have done my best to reach out to some other, more experienced YouTubers on this matter, and I will continue to do so until this series is finished. But first, I'm going to try to poke a bear. What I will be showing to you in this first video is some audio that was recorded a few weeks ago and promptly removed by Red Pill Religion. I find it to be a little funny because Dean had just come from a month sabbatical, and it was sort of a welcome back live stream where they were supposed to talk about heavy metal, which sadly they never got to, much to my dismay. Nope. First we gotta talk about Steve Mcrae of the Great Debate Community. Oh, excuse me. I mean, Steve McKKK.
I have been hearing lately that the guy who's in charge of, or more or less behind, the so-called Great Debate Community, the Great Debate Community, which never allows serious debate.
I wonder what he means by serious debate. Personally, I don't really consider what the Non-Sequitur Show does as debate. I think it would be best described as discussion for the most part. I think what he might be referencing here is that about 6 months ago he was on the Non-Sequitur Show and was made a fool of because of his bombastic, hypocritical, man-child-like attitude and getting caught in his own wicked web of lies and deflection. After all, manufactured outrage tastes best to those who grow it themselves.
But I've been hearing that recently, morally empty, depraved Steve Mcrae, who's behind scummy shit like the Great Debate Community and the Non-Sequitur Show, has been attacking Catholics.
Have they been attacking Catholics? Or were they just expressing justified and healthy outrage at a 2,000-year-old institution that has been known for its old men in dresses diddling kids? Then, when Father McFeely is caught, they cover up the evidence and don't report it to the proper legal authorities. The grand jury's report, which sparked this justified anger, had investigations that dated back 70 years involving hundreds of priests and over 1,000 victims in that 6 dioceses alone. And that's just the ones that got caught. What expresses attack in this? Rebutting religious apologists like yourself? You're not the victim here, Dean, but you are going to make yourself into the victim. That part is just predictable.
And has been attacking victims of the Catholic sex abuse scandal.
Yeah, citation needed. That's about it.
But I want to call out Steve Mcrae and his filthy friends, like the scum that is John Gleason, like the scum that is Shannon Quillam, the scum that is the people who hang out at the Great Debate Community. As a rape survivor, as a rape victim, as somebody who has worked for who has worked with many men and women who are rape and child abuse survivors, I want to call out right now the filthy bigot that is Steve Mcrae and his friends, who talk about sex abuse victims but refuse to talk about victims of atheist and non-religious and secular pedophiles.
There it is. It has begun. The start of the irrelevant victim narrative. Now let me put forth. I do not think men are somehow immune from rape or sexual assault. Those things are terrible and should never happen to anyone. What I am pointing out here is the context, because context always matters. Dean here is trying to weaponize his own victimization. If it is fact or fiction, it doesn't matter. What matters is how he is bringing up his own rape into the conversation. The context of the conversation is about the abuses of the Catholic Church, which you will see later leads into whataboutisms to twist the narrative to include something else that will then allow him to apply his own victimization to the conversation. I have coined this weird tactic the Esmay twist. Later, we'll get into the Esmay bop and the Esmay electric slide. But during this audio, he gets called out several times by members of his own channel. I should really say guests here. It's almost like they had a good narrative with Steve a few days before and didn't want to break the rapport they had made with him. But I could be wrong.
Wait, I thought we weren't going to talk about Mcrae and the Great Debate.
Well, I said we weren't, but, well, I don't know. We should talk about them. We should totally talk about them because Steve Mcrae and the Great Debate community, and it's not just Steve, but it's the other people who hang out with them, have been attacking Christians in specific for the Catholic sex abuse scandal.
So, who are they attacking? Are they accusing people of being part of the scandal? Or, once again, are they rebutting apologetics? Being angry at the actions of the Catholic Church is a rational reaction, and the Non-Sequitur Show has an invested interest in their channel and social media platforms. Of course they're going to react to what comes out in the investigation. It's relative to what they do on YouTube. I seriously doubt that when anyone heard of the investigation, their first thought was, well, no one's going to talk about this. It's just boring.
And I'm going to repeat again for anybody who's listening that I was sexually molested by a Chicago public school teacher who, by the way, hated Christians and Catholics, whose wife worked for the Chicago Police Department and whose big buddy worked for the Chicago Transit Authority, aka the CTA. I was abused and sexually molested by those people, and they were a ring running in the secular system to go after children.
Whoa, that's dark. But I can understand why you'd want to spin that narrative. You are a self-admitted conspiracy theorist and a Pizzagator. And I'm not joking, Dean is in fact a Pizzagator.
And this scumbag is pretending that Christians, and especially Catholics, have a special problem here. And I am sick. As a sex abuse survivor, I am sick of hearing about it. And I am sick of people like Steve Mcrae of the Great Debate Society and the Non-Sequitur Show and all that other filth, pretending that atheists and the non-religious have some kind of moral high ground here. And they have none. They have none at all. I want to go ahead and shut up now and let other people talk.
Of course they have a moral high ground. Their and my identity isn't directly attached to an institution who has demonstrably turned a blind eye to child molestation with their ranks, and has chosen to hide their actions from proper legal authorities. It took the investigation of proper legal authorities to uncover these disgusting systemic crimes. People have played apologist for these actions, even claiming, you yourself even claiming, that it was the gay mafia who was responsible for this.
All right, Robert, Comrade Dimitri has just called me out in the chat and done a really good job of calling me out and telling me I'm wrong. And he is completely correct. Comrade Dimitri, you are correct. He said, wait, I thought we weren't going to talk about the Non-Sequitur Show. I really didn't want to talk about Steve. And you know what? I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to say, you're right. We should stop talking about these filth who take advantage of rape victims like Steve Mcrae. So we should find some other way to talk about something else. I merely note it because I've been gone for more than a month, and I've watched this filthy bigot who's no better than a Klansman, Steve Mcrae and his friends, continue to odiously attack Christians as if he's not a filthy, scummy, two-faced pig who doesn't actually care about rape victims like me and others I've known.
It's not about you, Dean. I know you really want it to be about you, but it's not. So moving forward, he continues the rant and gets called out for a third time.
The atheist community has gotten away with, the scumbag skeptic community has gotten away with indicting everybody who's not them. And I have otherwise watched recently as Sargon of Akkad.
Max.
I'm sorry, what? Yes? Am I ranting again? Sorry, Derek.
Calm down a little bit.
At the time I recorded this audio, I was thinking about returning to YouTube. I had a book on atheism I wanted to review, along with some movies like the What About the Chupacabra starring Eric Estrada's hair. So I thought I would go on and request a talk with Steve. It was rather easy. After popping into the Non-Sequitur Show Discord and messaging him on the Twitters, I received a prompt invite for a discussion about who Dean was to him, amongst other things. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to capture my own audio because I'm an amateur and a moron, so I had to play sushi chef with this a little bit. Steve, if you see this, I would really like for you to call me out if any of this is out of context. I did manage to capture Steve's audio, though. This is a bit ironic because hours before I discovered that I had not captured my side of the conversation, I tweeted out this. And just in case, when I had a conversation with the godless engineer, he recorded our talk, and I deeply appreciate that. One of the first things I asked Steve was about Dean's habitual stance on taking the mantle of the victim. Dean might be a victim, but as I said before, he is not the victim. The subject is the Catholic Church, not some secular system.
No, he definitely, I mean, he maintains he's a victim, which is fine. I'm not going to go into whether he was a victim or not. I have no idea, right? But he does play the victim card. And what's worse is he has a narrative now that I'm somehow, by criticizing the Catholic Church, by criticizing what's happened with the pedophilia and the child molestation, that I'm blaming the victims, which is completely and utterly absurd. I have never once blamed the victims. The victims are victims, and they're victims because of the crap that went on in the Catholic Church that he's not acknowledging. And he's trying to shift the focus, and he's trying to shift the blame from the church and from the priest and from the systematic system, the systemic system that allowed for these things to happen. Oh, good Lord. Well, he also has the atheist mafia. You know, he uses hyperbolic words, right? Thinking that people are going to like buy into it nowadays. And I've got to tell them that nobody cares. People want, again, they want substance. They want facts. They want things they can actually go look into. And he has none of that. He just uses these buzzwords to try to lay this narrative out because he doesn't want to deal with the absolute facts that the Catholic Church had condoned these types of things for decades and then covered them up. And he's rather than having to acknowledge that, he's trying to change the narrative and say, oh, look, such and such is blaming the victims, or such and such is making a bad argument saying that all people are complicit in the Catholic Church. Well, they are in some degree. I do believe very strongly that everybody who remains in the church is somehow morally complicit, because they're still saying after all this stuff, we're okay with the church, we're okay with them trying to clean up their mess, what they've tried to do for decades, and they haven't. They've failed. So I do think there's a degree of complicity there, but I don't blame the victims, right? The people that have been victimized that stay in the church. I understand that they are traumatized. They're not thinking rationally, in my opinion, right? But they're allowed to make their own decisions, right? But I'm not going after them. I'm going after the people that continue to fund the church, that still say, I'm going to give my money to an organization that has provided a means not just to foster an environment where child molestation occurs, but covers it up and makes a system, designs a system so they can move around priests of different dioceses, designs a system where they can pay off people so they don't go to the police, they don't file reports. Almost $4 billion was spent on covering these things up. Dean doesn't recognize any of these things. These are not irrelevant things to him. He'd rather, again, change the narrative and say, oh, well, such and such is such a horrible, horrible person. They're scum. They're evil. They're bigoted. They're racist. They're homophobic or whatever. I mean, ironic from him.
Now, I'm going to be honest with you here. When Steve ended with that, I shook my head and dismissed it. To me, Dean wasn't homophobic. I'm pretty sure I even said that to Steve. But later I went to the Red Pill Religion Discord and I found this. Oops, my bad. While I don't necessarily agree with Steve's entire position on this topic, the church, much like a country, is not exactly representative of every member within its flock or borders. In fact, very often members of countries and churches disagree with what their higher-ups would say. But at the same time, I also recognize that the church is an organization and not a country, perhaps debatably. So for me, it's a bit of a mixed bag. However, I do agree with the notion of ceasing financial support, which is what I believe is the crux of Steve's position. And there is nothing I find unacceptable with this stance. This is a long-time running criminal ring within the Catholic Church, and considering the type of crime, outrage is to be expected. Then you add on people playing apologist, and that's just fuel for the fire. Steve and I then talked about the insults that Dean uses.
Yeah, I'm a cult leader. I'm KKK. I'm scum. Again, if you notice, he's really high on these pejoratives rather than have anything of substance. I mean, you could probably go back. I've had, I'm going to guess 800, 900, maybe even close to 1,000 videos out there. I mean, between all the channels I have 3 channels. So I know I have at least 700 on one channel, and we have 200 on Non-Sequitur. That's, 900 right there. And I probably got 100 on the other channel. So I mean, 1,000 videos. I don't think I've ever once accused somebody of being a KKK member that I can recall. Not once. No, that I can recall. Yeah.
Okay. Let's get this straight. I really don't have a problem with the insults. Yeah, it's a sign that you're an asshole, and Dean has never really taken the time to justify why Steve is no better than a Klansman. But, and I don't mean to be insulting to Steve and his friends, because this is where I go off track a little bit. It is my opinion that this is the most heinous, most deplorable thing about Dean. It is predictable, and at the same time not very funny. I mean, come on! Mix it up a bit. Play with some words. You came up with McKKK when Steve McKlansman was staring at you right in the face. If insulting people were like making a song, the insult should be the verse and the bridge, and the laughter should be the chorus. Insults, like music, is an art. Don't exploit it by repeating yourself. But Steve continues.
Yeah, well, and he uses these terms ubiquitously when it comes to people. I mean, he's not just called me these things, but he's called like Shannon Q these things, who's one of the nicest people around. I mean, she's smart, she's intelligent, and funny, has a great channel, and he just dogs on her and doesn't address anything that she has to say, right? And that's because he has no retort. He has no rejoinder to come back and actually argue any of these positions, of any kind of consequential positions. He basically is just such a throw out there, oh, these people are just, atheist scum. And again, he throws me into that category, even though I've corrected him and explained to him I'm not an atheist. It don't matter to him, right? Facts are irrelevant when it comes to persecution porn.
Now, I like that term, persecution porn, because that's what it is. Dean all too often takes the role of the victim, something I will be covering in another video. However, in my next video in this series, I will be covering my observations and communication with Shannon and the Godless Engineer, both who were very polite and helpful, seeing that I'm still an amateur YouTuber. But speaking of the Godless Engineer, I asked Steve about this.
I mean, you're appealing to a very specific definition. It's fine if you want to define it any certain way, but what I'm saying is that lack of belief in a god is just a fine definition for atheism.
Okay, it's just a lie every time you say it, Godless Engineer. It's a lie every time you say it, you liar.
How am I a liar?
Had enough here. Do you have anything more to say about this hateful ideologue?
Max, I still don't understand how I'm lying right now.
Okay.
So Dean must either be a telepath or he is intellectually dishonest. Maybe that's a false dichotomy. There is no way he can make a logical justification to calling Godless Engineer a liar here. You do not decide what other people believe in. You are not the arbiter of belief. Here was Steve's opinion during our interview.
I don't know what even Dean would mean to even calls me a liar about that. I mean, he also calls him a liar because obviously, Godless Engineer promotes mythicism, and Godless Engineer knows a lot about the Bible as far as that particular topic. I mean, I've listened to him. I have no idea about that topic, and so I'll defer to him when it comes to these topics, no problem, or when it comes to the Bible stuff. So he's calling him a liar because he disagrees with him, right? And that's a problem because whether you accept mythicism or not, I particularly don't, but it's okay. But whether you agree with it or not, that doesn't make somebody a liar. Godless Engineer is not being a liar for him putting forth a narrative of mythicism. He's putting forth his position. He's making a cogent argument, right? And it's perfectly fine to do that. That's what we want in this community. And this lack of belief thing, what is there to lie about? He does not believe in God. You can't call somebody a liar when they're telling you what their position is, because then you're basically playing mind police at that time. You're saying, oh, wait, I know your mind better than you know your mind. I don't believe in God. If somebody tells me, Steve, you believe in God, well, no, I don't. I have no belief in that. Why would I lie about that? I'm going to put forth my actual positions. It doesn't mean I believe God doesn't exist, which I hold to as philosophical atheism, right? That's why I'm not a philosophical atheist. But all agnostics don't have a belief in God. All theological non-cognitives have no belief in God. All ichtheists have no belief in God. There's a lot of positions that don't have a belief in God. So when somebody says that, all atheists have in common is they don't believe in God, well, sure, but I can make the same argument that all non-theists don't have a non-belief in God, right? All agnostics don't have a non-belief in God. So it's kind of a silly way to define a particular position to me. But it is the case that Godless Engineer doesn't have a belief in God. So why would Dean think to himself that he's the arbiter of of belief?
Now, in ending this video, I asked Steve if he had a message for Dean, and this is what he gave me.
The only thing I have to say to Dean is that Dean is not a factor in my life at all. His rhetoric is just nothing that I will ever address. Rare opportunities come up like this where someone like yourself has asked me to answer specific questions and one-on-one, and I'm happy to do so. When somebody comes to me with an agenda that wants to lay the record straight rather than promote an ideology, which you seem to have done, I appreciate it. But Dean is not a factor. He's irrelevant. He's been marginalized. People recognize the fact that he adds nothing to our conversation. He'd rather call people pejoratives. He'd rather people call people Nazis, or say they're a cult leader, or they're bigoted, or they're racist, when the people that he's talking about are some of the nicest, most respectful people that I know. And if he wants to call me those things, then I'm actually honored by it, because I'm with a bunch of people of similar character that he's denigrated. And if that's the way he wants to go, I'm quite fine with that, because the people that do know us, people that know me, the people that know Shannon, Apologia, Gallus Cranium, Gallus Engineer, Gallus Iowan, Cirrus, the whole group, know that none of us are bad people. I have the utmost respect for all of them. I know they try really hard to get their facts straight. And of course, we all make mistakes. We all have things that we get wrong. But the difference is, we're like I've said in this discussion, we're willing to change our positions, and we're willing to fix things. I've never seen them change anything. I've never seen Dean, honestly make a correction. He'll say so. He'll say, I apologize, blah, blah, blah. I was wrong. And then 3 days later, go right back to his shtick. And that's not what an apology is. That's not somebody who has contrition. That's not somebody who's changing their views. That's not somebody that has open-mindedness, which is, I think, is an epistemic virtue. I think it's something that in virtue epistemology is something that I strive for, to have open mind. And that doesn't mean that you have to believe everything. That just means that if somebody presents you a good argument, you need to evaluate it as such. But he's not willing to do that. So my only message to Dean is that he's just a non-factor to me, and he should be a non-factor to everybody else.
Stay tuned for my next video in this series, and I also have some movie reviews coming up. The first of which is titled The Chupacabra versus the Alamo. So, with that, like, subscribe, and glitch out.